Thanks, guys. Hi, everyone. It's been wonderful to see everybody's faces this week. Thank you so much for having us here. I'm Whitney Stewart, and joining me today is Sam Archibald and Matthew Merritt to present our panel, Future Stewards of America, an invitation to a lifetime of public lands conservation. Our projects converge on public land stewardship and the importance of developing a constituency for conservation that invites all people to participate in the important work of managing our public lands, be they youth, young adults, or professionals.
Given the wicked problems of underfoot public lands, increasing visitation and usage, and the overarching challenge of climate change, developing a larger constituency of people from the public realm willing to be able to commit to ongoing conservation efforts is incredibly imperative if we want to see the longevity of access to our public lands.
My project focused on the initial stages of stewardship, specifically exposing and welcoming diverse groups of young people to outdoor spaces and environmental career paths. Inspiring lifelong stewardship is the goal of the Yellowstone Youth Conservation Corps, a residential work-based program, that invites young people to work, play, learn, and grow in Yellowstone National Park over a 5-week period. I examined the range of impacts this program has on participants and found strong evidence that residential Corps programs foster personal, interpersonal, and professional development, as well as civic and environmental engagement. These programs provide a strong foundation that continues to have lasting impacts, preparing youth for future endeavors like StoreCorps, which, as Matt will now explain, help young adults develop professional skills in preparation for stewardship careers.
Thanks, Sam. My project focused on the expansion of the Stewardship Corps, the Sustainable Tourism Outdoor Recreation Corps, or StoreCorps. My project's aim was to provide success for the StoreCorps in the 2022 season, while also fostering partnerships and looking towards the future potential of the Corps. I chose to do this project not only because I believe in the ethos at STORE, but because I believe stewardship is crucial when addressing issues such as climate change. By giving the space for passionate young professionals to conduct the work the environment needs, you will see positive changes. This is why my project represents the middle stages of our stewardship life cycle. While Sam's project focuses on the engagement of our youth, my project's purpose is to take those engaged youth and eventually place them in legitimized careers in stewardship. This will cultivate engaged professionals who may eventually become engaged stakeholders, which is also imperative for environmental work, as Whitney will now explain.
My project focuses on the last stage of stewardship, where conservation is managed by individuals who have a vested interest, such as area stakeholders, in addition to agency professionals. For my project, I'm working with the Forest Service and a stakeholder coalition to create a long-term recreational management plan for an incredible rock climbing mecca in the backcountry of White River National Forest. The management plan focuses on conservation for the area, which will address increasing visitation, which is resulting in habitat degradation and human waste challenges. Being that this area is in a remote location, it is a challenge to manage, which leads to the need for ongoing stakeholder commitment to the conservation of this area. I'm working to ensure that the management plan put into place not only serves the Forest Service, but also engages the stakeholders to participate in the long-term management, rounding out the life cycle of stewardship that our panel represents.
We hope that our projects put in context with one another, inspire ongoing conversations about participatory stewardship that extend beyond the limited time we have with you today. Public land management, or public lands, are a public responsibility, but it is our responsibility as public land managers to ensure that people of all ages have opportunities to experience, explore, help shape, and help care for the public lands around us. Thank you for attending our panel, and we hope you enjoy learning about our 3 contributions to public land stewardship. All right, once again, good morning. I'm Sam. For my project, I conducted an impact analysis for the Yellowstone Youth Conservation Corps, or YCC. YCC is a national summer youth employment program that engages young people in meaningful work experiences on public lands with the goal of developing an ethic of environmental stewardship and civic responsibility. Yellowstone YCC is the only residential corps program within the Park Service and one of the largest corps programs. Like most YCC programs, we recruit participants from around the country using a lottery system, meaning that many of our participants have limited experience with conservation, manual labor, and many have never even visited a national park before or even camped before. They are invited to do all of that at a very rapid pace over a 5-week program, working on various projects like trail maintenance, boardwalk repair, building fences, bumper logs, trailhead signs, installing bear boxes. In addition to the main crew projects, we also work on various citizen science projects, collecting data on key species throughout the park. Happy to talk more about those later. And visitor use monitoring, collecting data on park visitors in high use areas. Resource education is also a key component of the program. This involves paid field-based lessons on park resources, cultural heritage, and general stewardship and leadership principles, as well as some professional development activities, meeting with various park staff. Finally, though not paid, recreation is a key component of the program, with weekend activities and evening activities exploring and experiencing Yellowstone. So does that sound like an effective program? Yeah, thank you. I think so. The program directors think so. We have a lot of anecdotal evidence from the past decade with different individuals expressing how impactful this program was for them, but unfortunately no broader studies or no long-term data. So the project that I set out to undertake was trying to assess the extent to which Yellowstone does fulfill its mission of inspiring lifelong stewardship of land and communities, as well as exploring the full range of impacts produced by a residential corps program. I did so by first starting with the existing program analysis that Yellowstone YCC has. We have 2 types of studies, both relatively limited in their scope, but helpful for assessing the specific impacts of this program, especially in combination with existing literature. Again, there's not a lot of literature out there, but throughout the 70s, YCC was a federally funded program with upwards of 32,000 enrollees participating a summer, with some very intense studies from that period helping to supply additional data. So looking at the combination of themes between these 2 areas, I identified 5 specific themes where our YCC enrollees were likely to exhibit growth, specifically professional development, environmental engagement, personal development, interpersonal skills, and civic engagement. Each of these have specific definitions and criteria, but for the more subjective categories of personal and interpersonal, I also looked at specific sub-themes to specify. So looking at these 5 themes and 7 sub-themes, but also recognizing that there may be other benefits that I and other researchers might not anticipate, I decided to do kind of a 2-part study looking at both the extent of experiences throughout qualitative themes, but also the diversity of experiences, trying to capture various qualitative themes as well. To do so, I developed a 77-question Likert scale surrounding those 10 themes. This survey also included several open response sections, which I initially intended just for participants to use to clarify their responses. But a lot of our respondents actually used these to elaborate. We had 319 comments, some of them quite long, upwards of 200 words. So I decided to start with a qualitative analysis of those short response questions, but also 20 semi-structured interviews with participants to further dive into individual experiences. Happy to talk more about my methodology later, but for the sake of time, we'll skip ahead to results. So overall, very strong results across the board. I'm going to let the enrollees' words speak for themselves because one of the most enjoyable aspects of this program was getting to hear all about individual experiences. But we found very strong evidence of professional growth. About 61% of our survey sample is involved in sustainability, conservation, or environmental science careers. And although many enter the program already interested in this area, qualitative evidence suggests that this program was influential for many, steering them in this direction or changing their trajectory entirely. Environmental engagement was the strongest of any section, with very high results, upwards of 97 and 98% respectively, reporting that because they participated in this program, they feel more responsible or more appreciative of public lands. Other results, very strong, included increased personal attitudes and behaviors related to sustainability, as this quote represents, increased comfort in outdoor spaces, especially related to recreation, people feeling more comfortable engaging in backpacking, backcountry experiences, providing an introductory experience for many, with exposure to nature being a key qualitative theme. And then finally, increased awareness related to public lands in general, that framework, and where people can effectively intervene. Personal development, likewise, very strong skills in all of our subcategories. So we had 90% of our survey respondents agree that this program helped them develop self-confidence. 84% agree that it helped them develop work ethic, and 84% also agree in terms of emotional maturity. Qualitative themes describe strong feelings of accomplishment, especially related to their role in managing the park, or well, playing a role in contributing to park projects, and how that experience was influential continuing beyond the extent of the program. Other experiences related to resilience, maintaining a positive attitude, overcoming challenges, strong qualitative evidence for each of those themes. Interpersonal skills, likewise, very strong throughout all our categories. 82% strongly agreeing that it helped them develop leadership skills. 98% agreeing that it helped them work more effectively with many types of people and personalities. 91% agreeing that this program helped them improve communication skills, with kind of social confidence being a key sub-theme of that. And then 79% agreeing that YCC helped them to feel more comfortable with people of other cultures, races, ethnic groups. This was an interesting sub-theme. A lot of the looking at subpopulations, I didn't observe too many significant differences between groups, but with diversity, there was a significant difference between participants who grew up in urban communities and those who grew up in suburban and rural communities. But overall, qualitative evidence suggests that for many, this program was very influential, exposing them to different types of people and the diversity throughout the United States. Civic engagement, likewise, fairly strong results. This was the second strongest category behind environmental engagement, with 96% of survey respondents agreeing that they are more involved with their community because they participated in YCC, and qualitative evidence like this quote, suggesting that participating in this program played an important role in influencing attitudes about community and responsibilities related to community. All of our emergent themes strongly related to personality, or well, community, personal engagement, and those connections. Specifically, I identified a whole entire specific sub-theme on the importance of community divorced from kind of civic engagement, focused more on institutions. But that kind of organic side of community was quite strong. It's notable too that participants talked about community in terms of non-work related activities, late night activities around the campfire, inside jokes, weekend recreation activities, suggesting that the residential aspect plays an important role in this program. Other emergent communities related to the concept of this community as a safe space for exploring or expressing different gender identities, orientations, social awkwardness, and feeling accepted despite, feeling accepted within this community. And again, how influential that was, not just while at YCC, but afterwards as well. And then a final emergent theme, looking at the importance of role models, especially for crew leaders, but also for youth leaders, other staff, indicating that those interpersonal relationships have real significance. Finally, just to conclude, overall, our strongest growth observed in environment and community engagement, suggesting that YCC does inspire lifelong stewardship of land and communities, a very wide range of benefits, many specifically tied to the residential aspect of this program. And then overall, just very strong impact. We had 31 survey respondents and 6 interviewees describe this program as transformative or life-changing. That doesn't include many others who described it as influential, impactful, memorable, or enjoyable. So what does this mean? It's my hope and my community sponsors' hope that this data will support, help build the constituency supporting YCC, both financially and administratively. Residential programs do entail a significant cost, but also significant benefits that we're trying to demonstrate, not just for Yellowstone, but for other NPS YCC programs as well, conducting a cost benefit analysis, looking at incorporating a residential program. And then finally, supporting future analysis. In my report, I include detailed appendices so that others can replicate this research. We would love to have some research on non-residential core programs. Unfortunately, I was not able to incorporate that into this study, but would be very helpful. And then finally, just building on the evidence surrounding core programs in general, with recent calls for a civilian climate corps or other broad participatory stewardship programs to combat climate change becoming increasingly relevant. So many people to thank for this program, especially Mike Coonan and Bob Furman, my community sponsors, who have been great personal and professional mentors to me. All of the survey participants and interviewees who shared their experiences with me. Special thanks, MJ, Salif, Dr. Bettis, Jess, thank you all for your mentorship. Writing center tutors and statistics peer tutors. Statistics were not fun. And yeah, that's my email. I'm more than happy to address any outstanding questions. Thank you. Yes, Janaea. Yeah, no, my background's in youth empowerment, or youth programming more generally. I kind of started MEM to shift in more of an environmental direction. And as many of you know, initially had an entirely different project lined up. But after working for YCC last summer, this opportunity opened up and seemed perfect for a lot of ways. And yeah. Yes. Yeah, great question.
Sam, if you can repeat the question.
Yes. What are some barriers to having more residential programs? Largely cost, right? They are fairly expensive programs. Yellowstone YCC has around a $300,000 budget. Granted, we have 15 seasonal staff. Well, no, 17 seasonal staff typically, and then 1 permanent staff. But also just the structural support. So having the space to house YCC crews, having vehicles, having tools, having all the facility and logistical support is fairly difficult. Yellowstone, obviously, with its geographic and kind of administrative size, well suited to this. Formerly, Yosemite used to have a residential core, but that program was shut down. It is a lot easier at larger park units than smaller parks, but hopefully, yeah, I think strong evidence that residential programs do have added benefits, and I would love to see more within the Park Service. I should mention that the Forest Service has several residential programs as well. Yeah, Eli. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. The question was if there were any insights from earlier groups. No, I did statistical analysis of all our subgroups, and one of which was comparing 2012 enrollees with 2018 and 2019 or 2012 and 2013 with 2018 and 2019. No significant differences in scores. I will say I observed on a qualitative level, many of the interviewees from earlier years were more, or it was easier for them to express their thoughts on how YCC affected them, perhaps because they had more established careers, whereas for many of the younger enrollees who are still finishing up college, harder to talk about the professional advantages, for example.
Thank you. I think that's the time we have for
Yeah.
questions.
And now I will introduce Matt Merritt.
How is it going, everyone? My name is Matthew Merritt, and my project is titled Expanding Environmental Stewardship. Sit down. There we go. All righty. So before I begin to explain my project, I'd like to give a little bit of background on myself. This past summer, I had the privilege to work for the Sustainable Tourism and Outdoor Recreation Corps, which was a truly formative experience. The job has two parts, the first being sustainability projects like the construction of hiking or biking trails, and the second being outreach and education at trailheads around topics such as leave no trace and sustainable camping. One experience from this past summer that truly inspired my project was the construction of beaver dam analogs in the Taylor Canyon. This project was created to bring water back to an incredibly barren part of the canyon where beaver habitat had previously flourished. After spending a long day weaving willows and packing mud, we began to see almost instant payoff. That small trickle of water from the morning had turned into a massive pool. Ancient beaver channels began to fill, backpacks poorly placed were soaked, and smiles were shared by everyone around. These couple of days working on this project demonstrated to me the power of stewardship organizations, and I wanted to do anything to help. This moment, among many others, inspired me to center my project around the StoreCorps and ensuring its success for continued seasons. For my project, I've broken it into three sections. The first is ensuring the success for StoreCorps in the 2022 season. The second is fostering partnerships for StoreCorps. And the third is envisioning the future of StoreCorps in both Colorado and Gunnison Valley. For the first section of ensuring the success in 2022, I had to consider what was missing or lacking from previous years. One thing that I noted was the lack of tools. So I put together a wish list and wish list budget of all the necessary tools we could need for future projects. After consulting with the previous crew leader and my community sponsor, I then assisted in applying for two grants, the Rocky Mountaineers and the Gunnison Stewardship Fund, both totaling around $20,000. For these grants, I finalized the budgets and put together two letter of inquiries for our application. The second challenge of ensuring our success for the season was to assist with the hiring process for our crew members. For this, I revised the crew member position, put together a recruitment poster, sent many emails to many amazing professors who have gone out of their way to help spread the word, and will be assisting in the hiring process within the next few weeks. If you're looking for a job, please hire, or please scan that QR code. The final challenge for ensuring the success of this season was to become the ultimate training resource for the Corps. In previous years, we have outsourced experts in the Valley to assist with our crew trainings. To save the crew both time and money, I decided to participate in several workshops and trainings, which have given me the skills to properly train our stewards this season. In addition to receiving these trainings, I will also be taking part in a new initiative to help train volunteers in Gunnison in stewardship skills and crew leader skills. Some of these trainings included Leave No Trace interpretive skills, Outdoor Stewardship Institute's crew leader training, Colorado Mountain Club's RIMS app training, along with many, many other online courses. For the Fostering Partnerships section of my project, I decided to apply and become a fellow for the National Forest Foundation. Because the STORE Corps was created in partnership with Gunnison County and the National Forest Foundation, I decided to take part in this fellowship and then therefore center my practicum around the STORE Corps. This fellowship included a 50-hour facilitation training in Washington that I took part in and eventually utilized skills from when I assisted with the U.S. Forest Service roundtables for revisions for the forest plan for the Jimug and Uray National Forests. I was also fortunate enough to be asked to be a note taker for the Forest Service Wildfire Crisis Strategy roundtables for both Region 2 and Region 3. Throughout this fellowship, I also took part in various trainings and workshops around topics such as NEPA and project management. Through these workshops, I was introduced to many emerging concepts and amazing professionals taking time to educate this new wave of environmentalism. Also, through this fellowship, I was allowed to sit in on important meetings for NFS, such as their advisory council meeting, to truly understand what it takes to run a nonprofit. Finally, I was given the opportunity to write a blog for the official National Forest Foundation site around what STORE Corps was currently doing around designated dispersed camping in the valley. Not only was this fellowship incredibly enjoyable, but it also allowed me to network with a fantastic group of young professionals from around our country. For the third and final section of my project, the future of STORE Corps, I decided to look at what the Corps would look like scaled to the state level. The program was named the Forest Ambassador Program, or 4-Corps. The main driving force behind this creation would be to increase the amount of high-paying stewardship jobs and further legitimizing it as an actual career in the environmental world. For the first section of this, I put together the basic framework of what the program would look like, which would detail such things as what is the position, how crews would be hired, compensation, season schedule, topics they would educate the public on, training they would need to take part in, and of course, where the program would be based out of. Within this basic framework, I put together a potential communication hierarchy that demonstrated how issues and needs would be taken care of in such a large organization. This communication hierarchy also went over how the board of directors would communicate with the National Forest Foundation. Finally, I put together a recruitment strategy that details the type of candidate we should have for every position from crew member all the way up to the board of directors. This recruitment strategy has several approaches for reaching students and potential candidates in other states, such as offering employee housing through a partnership with Vail Resorts. For the very last section of my project, I decided to look into the concept of destination stewardship, how it would fit into Crested Butte, and how STORE could fit into that equation. Very briefly, destination stewardship is the process by which local communities, governmental agencies, NGOs, and the tourism industry take a multi-stakeholder approach to maintaining the cultural, environmental, and economic and aesthetic integrity of their country, region, or town. Crested Butte, with its bustling tourism economy and affinity for sustainable spaces, is a perfect candidate for this concept. For my final paper of my environmental psychology class, I painted a hypothetical scenario with details such as potential partnerships, how we can increase supply chain access, incentives for both the visitors and the residents, and how STORE Corps, of course, will be an integral piece moving forward. As my presentation comes to an end, I would like to acknowledge several individuals and organizations that have supported me through my entire process. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge the entirety of the MEM staff, as their contributions and hard work have culminated in all the projects you have witnessed yesterday, today, and you will witness tomorrow. Next, I would like to acknowledge and thank Joe Lavarini, who was my community sponsor and Gunnison County Stewardship Director, for both his guidance and help through this process. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Jeffrey Sellen, and Dr. John Hostover for being both my mentors on this project. Next, I would like to acknowledge and thank the National Forest Foundation for their support, training, and encouragement during this entire project. Next, I would like to acknowledge and thank both my parents, Lon and Christine Merritt, and my girlfriend, Juliana Spinella, for their encouragement, support, guidance, and love. And I know I would not be standing here right in front of all of you today without any of them. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge my cohort. As Barry Lopez once said, we cannot, of course, save the world because we do not have authority over its parts. We can serve the world, though. That is everyone's calling, to lead a life that helps. Thank you all for listening, and I'll take any questions. Josh? No. It's okay. It's a learning process. You know, it's not always about getting the grants. We do have the necessary funding, thankfully, to run StoreCore, but some of that stuff might have to wait a little bit.
We have a question online, which is, I'd like to hear more about the mutual benefits of destination stewardship.
Yeah.
From,
Oh my
Chris
God.
Maderi.
I could go on for hours about that. So the whole premise behind destination stewardship is to take somewhere that is very, very popular and to incentivize taking part in local sustainability efforts. So, you know, the best example I could provide is if you're a visitor coming to Crested Butte, if you take part in a Simba Day where you get help build a hiking or a biking trail, maybe you have reserved camping spots already waiting for you when you're done that day. Or maybe you get local discounts within like the local fly fisher guide. But yeah. Thank you. Molly. Thanks for the question, Molly. She asked for the people on Zoom, how are the recruitment strategies going? And if we are seeing any interest, we do have a couple of applicants, but we are always looking for more to add to our team. Dr. Sellen. Yeah, thank you for the question, Dr. Sellen. The question was if this was to continue to develop, and the same with the Civilian Climate Corps, if that's to continue to develop, how can STORE be an integral part of supporting that? Is that correct? Yeah, I mean, I think just by being out there and by participating in stewardship projects, no matter how small they are, even if it's by educating someone about, you know, what is climate change, here's like, you know, some quick facts about it, and here's what you can do to maybe lessen your own impact or anything like that. I definitely see a lot of great potential with that with STORE and its education piece.
One more that's coming in from Zoom comes from Hannah Schaefer-Tibbett, and it's, can you talk more about the community engagement piece of StoreCore, in particular, how to better engage a wide and diverse audience?
That's a great question. I think one of the best things, whether it's STORE or anyone, to listen to diverse audiences is to just, it sounds like a duh moment, but just sit down and listen, like really listen. Don't try to come in with answers and ideas that you know exactly what to do, because you might not. There might be someone sitting right next to you that has better expertise. And I think just by sitting down and trying to have a cup of coffee and trying to understand each other, I think that's one of the best ways. And with STORE, it's a little harder to do that, but we try to do that by just being people out on the trail and telling people that, hey, we're not perfect either, but we're trying. And now we will hear from the amazing Whitney Stewart.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. Now we will continue down the life cycle of conservation by looking at my project addressing increasing recreational use and the human impacts to the natural environment. Slide, please. My project is focused in Lime Park, which is in White River National Forest. This area is a rock climbing mecca located in the backcountry of Eagle County in Colorado. Not only is this area used by rock climbers, but many other recreational groups such as campers, cattle grazers, the jeeping community, and many more. My project came to fruition as White River National Forest identified this being an area of need of management due to the continual increase in use by recreationalists, especially the rock climbing community. Lime Park is located in a remote area accessible by vehicle only during the summer and early fall months. And due to this and limited resources, management of the area is a challenge. The primary concern with this increased visitation is how to manage these impacts resulting in human waste and area degradation with these limited resources and limited management for the area. Next slide, please. The goal of this project is to use the information gleaned from the data that I've collected and the stakeholder meetings that we've held to develop a recreational management plan designed to keep Lime Park from being severely impacted over the long term. The plan will rely on the ongoing support of a stakeholder group dubbed the Friends of Lime Park, who ideally will co-manage this area with the Forest Service. With human waste being the issue of main concern, my project is examining which waste management strategies will best suit the needs of Lime Park while additionally serving the stakeholders' interest. By developing a management plan incorporating adaptive management strategies, I aim to ensure this area remains unhampered and achieves a high-quality user experience for all. Next slide. The main goal of the project, as mentioned, is the creation of this management plan, which hopefully will be implemented by the Forest Service once completed. The goal of the goal consists of three main objectives: addressing the human waste challenge, as mentioned, the creation of the Friends of Lime Park Stakeholder Coalition, and along with that, a long-term roadmap that will help the stakeholder committee manage the area successfully in partnership with the Forest Service. And then the collection of the data that I've gone about to create the management plan. Next slide, please. So in completing my project, this has required sequentially gathering data while working with stakeholders to discuss and develop the management plan. I began by collecting baseline data for the Lime Park area using trail cameras to help me understand visitation patterns. Additionally, I did an assessment of the current site conditions, including mapping existing backcountry locations using GPS, which I hope will be used to create a GIS layer that can be used for future use. I also conducted a survey, which was posted both on site at Lime Park and on some of the more prevalent rock climbing sites which featured Lime Park. The survey aimed to gather information about our users to understand who was using the area, where they were coming from, how they found out about Lime Park, what their recreation plan was like while on site. And I also asked questions to understand if they had a waste management plan when they were planning on coming and what they wanted to see the management of this area look like for the future. Most importantly, we held a stakeholder meeting in October of 21 on site at Lime Park to understand our stakeholders' needs and desires. Next slide, please. So in looking at the data collection, I approached getting information by using trail cameras versus using any other sort of transportation collection method, such as traffic counters. I wanted to do this because I wanted to capture the whole story of how users were accessing the area. Versus traffic counters, I would just see information about people coming in and going out with just tick marks. The trail cameras allowed me, as you can see on the slide here, to get dynamic information of what kind of vehicle they were using, how often they were coming in and out of the area. Were they on foot? Were they on bikes? It was really interesting to see this information, and I got some great data. I also had a little resident ground squirrel who made lots of appearances and kept the data organizing very interesting to do. So as you can see, I was able to collect that dynamic information. Overall, I found more variation than expected in the mode of transportation people were using, the frequency of movement people were using, or they were coming in and out of the area more frequently than I expected. And then it also gave us overall information about travel pattern trends, such as heavier use on holiday periods or over the weekends. My long-term goal for this data is to get it into a data set that can be added to as hopefully data is continued to be collected for future years, and that this information can be used to help support management decisions for the future. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, one of the more important aspects of the project was our stakeholder meeting, which provided valuable insight into what the group found most important for the successful management of the area. The stakeholder meeting was a great success with 15 people in attendance representing 5 different interest groups. We had interest groups from Western, the U.S. Forest Service, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Eagle County Climbing Coalition, the 10th Mountain Huts Division, and one of our cattle grazers permittees. So overall, the human waste issue was the #1 concern for all of the stakeholders, aligning with the Forest Service main priority to address for this area. A number of solutions were presented by the group, such as wag bags, pit toilets, and on-site education, just to name a few. These strategies, along with the data that I've collected, will be a major contributor to what I write for the management plan. Next slide, please. Overall, the outcomes of my project will result in this recreational management plan for Lime Park, which will be completed in July of 22, as I'm still working on it. Addressing the management plan will address the increase in use of the area, focusing on the solutions for human impacts to the natural environment, mainly the human waste issue. Supporting the management plan, I'm creating a roadmap for the Friends of Lime Park stakeholder group to use as they assist with the long-term management in conjunction with the Forest Service. Next slide, please. So after my project is completed, my hope is to have the Forest Service approve and implement this management plan, and then the joint management between the Forest Service and the Friends of Lime Park stakeholder group. Really, my goal is to make sure that the Friends of Lime Park group continues to be engaged with the Forest Service and continues to work with the Forest Service long-term. And additionally, I really hope to set the Forest Service up with Western to continue a partnership in this area, possibly leading to additional master projects focused on Lime Park. Next slide, please. So I couldn't have done this without so much help, and I cannot say thank you enough to all the people who have supported me through this journey. Thank you to Western and the MEM program for hosting opportunities such as this so my master's project could exist. A huge thank you to Shelley Grail with the U.S. Forest Service, who found the need for this project and took me on as her master's student to tackle the challenge. To Gray O'Neill, who was a Forest Service intern, who helped me with everything I needed, and especially being my eyes on the ground when I could not be. To Dr. Michael Russell, my MEM advisor, who offered endless support and guidance. To Dr. Melanie Armstrong and Maddie Rain with the Center for Public Lands for helping connect me with Shelley Grail in the first place. To the Haley Grant for funding my project. To my husband, Cole Stewart, for supporting me over the last 2 years, over countless hours of homework. To my good friends, Mike Lotz and Kelsey Head, who are sounding boards often for my project. To the entire MEM community who offered encouragement and so many ideas. And to my family for being mental and emotional cheerleaders over the last 2 years. Thank you to all the stakeholders who I've worked with and who are listed here who attended our stakeholder roundtable, and everyone else who may have supported me along the way. Thank you all. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So for questions, Whitney, I think you can see questions that come in the Q&A and you can answer them there. And then for in-house questions, I'll bring the mic so that Whitney can hear you. You want to start? I think there's one Q&A that's in there right now. Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, thank you. This is from Lizzie. It says, Whitney, what did you name your squirrel friend? Lizzie, I never got to that point, but now I definitely have to come up with something hilarious. He had like a very Happy Gilmore sort of approach where he would just pop his little head up in all of the pictures. You would get these little like cameos from him. It was great.
Hey Whitney, this is Eli. I have a question about the Friends of Lime Park group. What's sort of the organizational makeup of that? Who are the members? Sort of what do you see that group progressing into the future?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So really it's anybody that has any sort of vested interest in this area is welcome to be a member of it. I definitely foresee that the Friends of Lime Park group will change as time goes on. But mainly I looked at anyone within kind of a range from the highway systems on both sides. So this area is accessible from Eagle, Colorado and from Basalt, Colorado. So anyone that may have been impacted by travel of these visitors through the area. So for example, the Sylvan Lake State Park is one way that people access Lime Park. So CPW was really a big stakeholder, not only because of the people passing through Sylvan Lake State Park, but it passes through a lot of area that they manage. Additionally, for example, like the 10th Mountain Division, one of their huts is on the route to Lime Park. So they're impacted by this area. And then, as I mentioned, we have our cattle grazers who free range out in that area. And they're definitely impacted by the visitation. So all of these people are invited to be a part of the stakeholder group because all of their voices are going to really matter as we move forward with the management. Thanks for the question. I've got one online here I'll grab. So from Chloe says, great job, Whitney. Thanks, Chloe. Did you have any issues with privacy concerns and trail cameras? Good question. Definitely, I definitely had to think a lot about that. So with some of the data that I got, you could see license plate numbers, you could see, you could make out, faces or visual recognition. So with this data being internal, if it doesn't ever get used, then no, we wouldn't really have as many issues. But yes, I definitely have to think about how I will be making that information private so we don't have somebody's license plate, right, revealed in a public setting. But really good question. I think that, oh, I just saw one pop on and pop out. Any other questions in the room?
Hey Whitney, I'm curious. I don't know very much about, well, the human waste issue is widespread. I don't know that much about it. I'm curious about, you stated that it was pretty unanimous that the stakeholders said that's the #1 issue. I'm wondering how they communicated that to you. Were they like, there's poop everywhere, or there's toilet paper flying in the wind? Just curious about how that was conveyed.
Yeah, great question. So that was actually something that when we went into our stakeholder roundtable, we were very cautious about not wanting to lead with that information because we wanted the stakeholders to give us their concerns first. So knowing that the Forest Service concern was the human waste, I didn't want to lead that stakeholder meeting saying like, here's what we want to focus on. And it was pretty impressive how we started the meeting with some pleasantries and, getting to know each other. And then I think it was just, I can't remember exactly who it was, but we just launched right into it. It was one of the stakeholders said, okay, so I want to talk about the human waste issue. And then, the conversation just kind of came from there. So it was definitely something that was not beat around the bush by our stakeholders. It was something that it is top of their mind. And unfortunately for that area, I think one of the reasons that it is such a prevalent problem is that you can see toilet paper, on the ground next to Lime Park Stream, which runs right down the center of our study site. So it's definitely top of mind for the people that care about this area the most. Thanks for the question.
I think we can go to the full panel.
Not broadly. Oh, sorry. The question was if I was planning on publishing. Not broadly. That was something that initially I looked into when I was planning on doing more of a comparative study looking at residential and non-residential. But when we shifted to just looking at Yellowstone YCC, we didn't need IRB approval since it's only internal program evaluation. So went with that for the sake of simplicity, but hoping to share internally among YCC coordinators. Yeah, from Yellowstone YCC, well, 61. So yeah, we sampled the full range of participants from 2012 to 2019. Of those 470 individuals, 111 responded to the survey, and 61% of the sample are currently pursuing ENVS careers.
It's a great question, Molly. So her question was, how has COVID impacted recruitment for cores? And if that lack of recruitment, is that affecting projects on the ground? And like the real short answer is yes, absolutely. Like if we don't have enough people to safely go out and build something like a BDA or be out there, you know, we can't do that type of work. So it definitely it is affecting recruitment. Same with the lack of housing as well. Can definitely affect that. That's why we try to recruit college kids and people that might be a little bit more flexible with their housing, but for sure we wish we could offer more.
Whitney, did you want to add anything? I'll say, yeah, now for YCC, we've had reduced programs the last 3 years, but typically have around 700 applicants that we have to reject. So no long-term issues with recruitment.
Okay, we do have one question on Zoom from Hannah. Can you talk about your approaches on how to make science communication outreach equitable for a diverse audience? This question is for all, so we'll start with Matt and Sam answering, and then we'll pass it to Whitney.
Could you repeat that again quickly?
Yes.
Sorry.
Can you talk about your approaches on how to make science communication and outreach equitable for a diverse audience?
That is a really good question. I would say in the terms of StoreCore, we try to come back to just like those basic principles of stuff of like, you know, like leave no trace, and we try to keep with the basics, and but still, it's a good question. I'm not sure how to answer that. And maybe.
Well, I can say for me in particular, trying to focus on translating scientific concepts without overly academic language. I feel like especially with social science, there's a tendency to heavily academicize. I don't know if that's a word. Make everything very academic in terms of talking about like response rates and statistical analyses and everything. But trying to move beyond that in my report, containing information on the analyses and the methods I used for anyone that's interested, but focusing on the results, especially the qualitative results that I think can speak to people on a lot more personal level. Whitney?
Yeah, and I would add, for my project specifically, we're trying to get an education portion out to the people using Lime Park of like understanding how to recreate in the backcountry if they never have before. So it's really looking at like connecting with people any way that they may access the information. So, looking at online, looking at making sure it's translated into the proper languages of people using the area, making it tangible, I think is the biggest piece for that communication aspect of just really making it accessible and tangible for anybody and everybody.
Any questions in the audience?
This question is mainly for Sam, but I think that Matt and Whitney may have some insight as well. I'm curious about how you see the landscape moving forward for federal funding for the type of programs that you presented.
Yeah, hard to say. There was a lot of chatter, especially during the campaign, Biden's campaign, about a civilian climate corps. Doesn't seem to have been much traction recently. Personally, I think that involving people on a more participatory level is critical. Climate anxiety is real and can be crippling in many cases, and giving people real alternatives of things that they can do in their communities to actually combat climate change more than recycle and use less water. It is really important, and I'm sure Matt can talk about that.
From what I've seen personally through the National Forest Foundation, with them producing and trying to get more jobs of like program coordinators and directors of sustainability across the country, I personally believe more organizations like StoreCorps will pop up eventually, because it is a great summer job. There is an incredible need for to get into environmentalism without having a master's degree, without having a bachelor's degree. We need to involve just the normal, or I shouldn't say normal, but just the public, the non, like Sam was saying, the non-academic public in this conversation, because their opinion is just as important as the academics are.
And I would add on the flip side for my project, we're anticipating kind of lack of funding for my project in particular, areas that are maybe not high priority, like something, down the road from us is Maroon Bells. They get a lot of funding. So that's why we're trying to set up the area to be managed and need the help of the stakeholders so that we can do the work that needs to be done without the funding that maybe we would like for the area.
Thank you all, and thank you for incredible work. I think that there are a lot of things that we make assumptions about in the recreation world, about things that have value to people and particularly to youth. And I really appreciate the way your projects try to make something that a little more intelligible through the work that you're doing. And so I appreciate that value that you added to this recreation conversation. So without any further ado, then I would like to congratulate 3 new Masters of Environmental Management students. Matthew Merritt, congratulations. Sam Archibald, thanks for that work in Yellowstone, really appreciate it. Whitney, we're so sorry you aren't here with us, but we want to congratulate you anyways. Thank you for the incredible work you all have done.